Alright, what's up guys? So in today's video, I'm going to be ranking all of the best and worst study methods that I've ever come across in my entire life. I'm going to give you a subjective ranking based on the actual learning science and as well as my own experiences so that I can save your time and you don't have to go through the pain that I did. Because I was searching for the best studying method for a long time until I discovered the system that actually helped me to get better grades. My name is Matthew. I got 3 stars and 1A in my high school exams. And in university, I'm currently studying financial technology with a double major in finance at the University of Hong Kong. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first method that I want to talk about is the Pomodoro technique. So this is a controversial one. I'm going to place the Pomodoro technique in C tier. Now, before you guys click off this video, let me explain. So the Pomodoro technique, the traditional method, is to spend 25 minutes studying intensively and then taking 5-minute breaks. And you do that repeatedly over and over again. So why is this trash? The reason why is because 25 minutes is not nearly long enough to get into the flow state. So the flow state, or a state of deep focus, is when you're sitting down and you're doing a past paper and you just lose track of time. 25 minutes is not nearly enough time to get into flow state. It actually takes around 15 minutes to get into flow state, but you're just going to be in that flow state for 15 minutes. So you're about to get into the zone, and you do get into the zone for a little bit, but then that timer rings, or your tomato timer suddenly rings, and you're just like, okay, shit, I gotta stop studying now. I'm gonna take that 5-minute break. But realistically, what is that 5-minute break gonna do to you? Is it gonna make you more cognitively sharp? You've barely done any work during those 25 minutes, and now you're gonna take a 5-minute break and disrupt your entire flow state? I don't know. This method just seems kind of stupid to me. I personally did use this when I was in high school, and it did work because the math problems that I did took maybe like 5 to 10 minutes to do. But now, bro, in university, one math problem probably takes like 20 minutes for me to fully solve and understand. So the Pomodoro technique is honestly kind of trash. That's why I like to call it the Pomodoro technique. The next technique I have in mind is the Feynman technique. So the Feynman technique is basically a technique where you explain something to someone else, whether it's a concept, whether it's a step-by-step to a solution to a problem set, or explaining the method on how to do this one specific past paper question. Well, okay, the Feynman technique is not a bad technique at all, provided that you actually have some sort of mastery of the material. Because you're not going to be able to teach the material to other people unless you've actually learned it yourself. So what I did to implement this technique was to study the material on my own, alone first, and then I would go up to my friend if he needed help, and I would explain to him the solution to like a practice problem. And that has actually helped me to learn much more effectively as well. But on a general day-to-day basis, the Feynman technique is pretty trash. So I'm gonna put it on C tier, simply because you're not going to be implementing this technique day to day. Like, you're not going to be learning the material if you're just trying to, like, who the fuck is going to sit there and like explain stuff to a teddy bear for like 5 minutes straight, or at least 10 minutes straight? It doesn't make sense at all. It's kind of stupid if you really think about it. There's much better methods to use. That's why I put the Feynman technique in the C tier. But if you're explaining this technique, if you're explaining a concept or a step-by-step solution to like a math problem to somebody else, then okay, the Feynman technique is honestly A tier. I would put it in A tier. But because of its really terrible daily usage, I'm putting it in C tier. So the next study tip that I have on my tier list is flashcards. When I'm saying flashcards, I'm talking about spaced repetition flashcards like Remnote and Anki. These allow you to schedule your cards over a long period of time so that you can help reconsolidate and burn that information into long-term memory. Flashcards are really good for declarative subjects. Now, there's 2 types of subjects. There's declarative subjects, which are essay-based, memory, facts. Think like humanities, biology, or geography, as well as medicine. These are very declarative subjects. But on the other hand, we also have procedural subjects. These are the subjects that require you to solve a step-by-step solution. For example, programming. For example, computer science, maths, physics. These subjects are very problem-solving based and analytical. So for declarative subjects, it's the subjects where you have to memorize information, flashcards are gonna be in the S tier, because Flashcards are very, very good if you're trying to drill information into your brain. Now, the software that I used in high school was called Remnote. I'm not sponsored or anything, but I genuinely believe that that tool helped me to get 97 and 99s in my A-level. So in my A-level business, I got a 96 only after implementing Remnote flashcard. And for A-level computer science, I got a 99 for the theory component after I implemented the flashcards. But for more procedural subjects like computer science and finance, stuff that involves a crap ton of calculation, like stuff I'm studying right now in uni, I would put this in the C tier. Because in uni, I don't really use flashcards anymore. Most of my courses are calculation based and I have to be able to solve problems on the go. I'm not going to be able to use a flashcard to memorize a problem that I've never seen before, right? The only way for me to do these problems is to simply do the problems. I cannot memorize the problems. I actually have to do them. Like imagine if you're a computer science student like me and you put on your flashcard how to reverse a linked list. But then suddenly the question that comes up on the exam requires you to reverse a doubly linked list. Well, then you're screwed because the flashcard didn't teach you how to reverse the doubly linked list. The flashcard does not help you understand the method and the process behind how you solve a problem. That's why for declarative subjects like maths and computer science and physics, flashcards are going to be in the C tier. But because of how useful they are in fields like medicine, like for example, like the people in my dorm here, all the top students use Anki. Like Anki is this flashcard software, which is really, really good. So because of that, I'm gonna put flashcards between B tier and A tier, depending on the subject level. So next one is sleep. This is an easy one. It's gonna go in S tier. S tier literally stands for sleep. Guys, you need to be sleeping well if you want to study effectively, because your brain actually has a cognitive load capacity that only recharges when you go to sleep. So imagine this kind of like a bar, energy bar, where if you don't sleep enough, it gets basically cut in half. And if you're trying to study deeply, and if you're trying to study effectively and trying to understand difficult concepts from difficult subjects, you need this to be as high as humanly possible. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to focus. Apart from focus, sleep actually also reconsolidates your memory so that you actually remember the shit that you studied during the day. If you don't sleep, your brain literally does not reconfigure its neurons because it only reconfigures its neurons during this phase called REM sleep. If you don't sleep enough, you're not going to be able to get to that point. All right, the next tip that I have, it's not really a tip, but it's more like something you do, is caffeine. So caffeine, caffeine is honestly, I would put it in C tier. Now, for those of you who love to drink coffee, I'm not gonna hate on you guys. I think caffeine is pretty good, but for me personally, I'm extremely sensitive to caffeine. So when I drink caffeine during the day, I will literally not be able to go to sleep at night. If you give me one glass of coffee at night, I'm gonna be cooked. So that's why I put caffeine in C tier, but that's just my personal preference. But for most of you, it will probably be in B tier because caffeine actually has a bunch of pretty good benefits like increased awareness and heightened concentration, both of which you need to study more effectively. So actually, honestly, I would just put caffeine in the B tier for the sake of it. If you want to learn how to actually implement all of the highest yield studying techniques that I'm going to talk about in this video into your own personal studying routine, then link down below is my community where I have a course that I basically break down all of the best studying methods and how I personally use them in my own studying routine. We also have a course on time management and productivity so that you can actually find time during the day to study and be able to stick to it consistently. Because simply knowing these studying methods isn't really enough. You've actually got to be able to implement them into your own personal routine. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to get those grades that you want. So if you want to get more personalized help from me, then you can check out the first link in the description below. All right, the next tip that I have is going to lectures. All right, so this mainly applies to you college students out there who are just like me and you're currently studying in university. If you're a high school student, you can skip this method. But okay, going to lectures is honestly not that good from my personal experience. If I have a 9 a.m. class, which I sometimes do, I'm gonna skip that class. I'm not gonna go to class. simply because number one, I want my sleep, and number two, at that time I'm going to the lecture, sitting down and listening passively from the teacher could be time where I actually sit down and read the lecture notes faster by myself. Now, for those of you who have really good lecturers in your university, by all means, go to class, go to lectures, listen to the examples that the professor actually gives in class. If your professor is good, he will not ramble off the slides. He will actually give you examples that are similar to the exam that he's going to give you. But if you have crappy professors like I sometimes do, don't go to lectures. Simply just read the lecture notes and do the thing in your own time. So because of that, I'm going to put going to lectures in C tier. Now, a caveat here. Make sure you go to the class that is right before your midterm and final exam, because there, your professor is not going to be explaining concepts. He's going to explain how the exam is going to work. You do not want to miss that, because you're going to miss out on valuable information that might actually help you get better grades in the exam. So for example, I had a class right before my final exam where the professor explicitly said that he will only test from lecture 1 to lecture 10, slide 53 or something like that. So if I didn't go to class, I would have missed that crucial piece of information and I would have studied the remaining lecture slides. So next one is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is honestly really underrated. If you're in college and your teacher sucks, like most teachers in college, then you're basically gonna have to use ChatGPT to explain concepts to you. I think ChatGPT belongs in the A tier, but only if you use it right. Because ChatGPT is useless if you're trying to learn the information for the first time and you're just asking it to summarize your lecture notes for you. That's not gonna help. Look, you need to first go through the lecture notes and truly understand what the lecture notes is trying to say. Then you can use ChatGPT to explain the parts that you don't understand. You still need to do that heavy lifting. It's like when you go to the gym, you actually have to do deadlifts by yourself. You can't have a machine or a spotter lift the thing for you. That's not how it works. That's not how you build muscle, right? You actually have to go and do the heavy lifting. Plus, ChatGPT is actually really good at generating practice tests. Its newest model, especially if you're on the pro version, is actually really good at generating practice tests. So for that reason, I'm putting ChatGPT in A tier. Next one is practice questions. Oh, this is going straight in the S tier. Practice questions are so good. So basically, practice questions, what I mean by this is your problem sets, assignments, tutorial, any problem sets and any questions you can get your hands on. Practice questions are absolutely amazing for studying. Number one, because they actually force your brain to think. And number two, because they're actually quite similar to the type of questions you would be facing on the actual exam. If you practice like you play, then you will play like you practice. All right, so the next one is rewatching lectures. If you're first being exposed to the material and you're trying to learn it for the very first time, sometimes you will need to watch lecture videos. I personally don't. I usually just read the lecture notes by myself. But if you're rewatching lectures, if you're rewatching and doing that over and over again, hoping to somehow learn the information by osmosis, then you are absolutely mistaken. Rewatching lectures is gonna go in the D tier trash category. Now, the reason why I put it in D tier is because this method is extremely passive. You're not using your brain to think. You're not using your brain to do anything. You're just trying to learn the information by osmosis and hoping it will somehow sink in and consolidate itself in your brain. Your brain knows when an information is important or not. And the only way you can somehow make this information important is to test yourself on it. Because if your brain knows that it has to actually use the information, then it must be important. You're basically tricking your brain to think that this information you're learning is important. But if you're just simply reading it again and again, if you're rewatching lectures and again, it's completely pointless. Same with rereading notes and slides. I'm putting it in the D tier as well. These two methods are basically the same. They're both trash. That's all you need to know. You're much better off doing past papers, practice questions, doing some actual active studying in your own personal studying routine. Next one on the list is spaced repetition. The S in S tier literally stands for spaced repetition. Similar to sleep, S tier, spaced repetition. It's not really a method that you use per se, but it's more of like a scheduling hack. So there was this learning scientist called Barbara Oakley who basically explained in her book, A Mind for Numbers, that you need around 5 to 10 reps of spaced out practice intervals if you want to learn the information and put it into your long-term memory. You've probably heard of the forgetting curve before. So the forgetting curve is a curve that basically states that with longer time, you're going to remember less of the information that you learned. In other words, your brain forgets information over time. The only way for you to put this information into long-term memory is to retest yourself over and over again over spaced out intervals so that the curve actually becomes flatter and flatter over time. When the curve becomes like this flat, basically you've put that information into long-term memory and you can count on the day of the exam, you're gonna be able to remember this really quickly. So spaced repetition is honestly really, really powerful. And I think all students should employ this method if they're trying to study. Now, personally, I don't schedule spaced repetition out like autistically on a calendar. I just do them again when I feel like I'm about to forget something. The next method on the list is past papers. This is going straight in the S tier. So past papers is actually really, really, really good because past papers is like practice questions, but doing them under timed exam condition. If you're doing past papers correctly, like I do, you're gonna be doing past papers using timed exam conditions. You're gonna be sitting down on your desk with a countdown timer and you're gonna be doing the questions without looking at your notes. So past papers, if you do them correctly, is the best method out there because you're simulating the exam conditions. And so when you sit the exam, you're gonna be much less nervous because you've already done a couple of practice papers before that exam. I like to use this analogy. If you practice like you play, then you will play like you practice. So that's why past papers belongs in the S tier. The next one on the list is cramming. So, okay, cramming is actually not bad if you do it earlier. If you do it like 3 weeks before an exam in university or 2 weeks before an exam, cramming is not bad. But if you're doing cramming like 2 days or 1 day before the exam, then cramming is just gonna, you just have to do it anyways, right? Might as well just do it earlier. So cramming is a pretty good study method. So I would put it in the A tier because cramming basically forces you to compress tons of information, pick up only the most important parts that will be tested and compress that into like 1 or 2 days of studying. According to Parkinson's law, work expands to fill the time allocated for it. Okay, so let's say it takes like 3 days for you to fully cram a subject. What most students will do if they have like such a long time to study, for example, like 3 weeks, 1 month, they're gonna space out that revision over a longer period of time and make it so that it's gonna be like, I don't know, like 2 weeks. In other words, because they don't have a sense of urgency, they're gonna be studying with much lower intensity. Cramming basically forces you to have a sense of urgency so that when you actually study, you're not gonna be goofing off doing some random shit like scrolling on your phone while you're reading lecture notes. No, you're gonna be actually doing past papers. So then the question is, if you're gonna be able to cram this within 3 days, why not just cram earlier? And so when you cram earlier, sometimes what ends up happening is that you start to realize that maybe you're a little bit weak in like chapter 4, chapter 5, chapter 6. So then you can use the remaining time before the exam to actually study and target those weak subjects. That's why cramming is really good if you're doing it earlier. So the next study tip on the list is pretty notes. Oh, this is going straight into D tier. Okay, pretty notes is extremely, extremely ineffective. Look, how is writing notes on a piece of paper and making it look pretty with all of these colors and stickers and all of the other unnecessary stuff gonna help you learn that information and put it inside your brain? It makes absolute 0 sense. I don't get why people do this. Like, they will like, on their piece of paper, they were gonna draw some really nice looking diagrams, add like 3 different colored highlighters, and make their notes look pretty. But how are you gonna remember the stuff and put it inside your brain if it's on a piece of paper. You're putting all of the emphasis on making that piece of paper look as pretty as possible, but you're not putting the emphasis on putting that information inside your damn brain. That's why I think the people who do pretty notes should honestly reconsider. If you do pretty notes, I don't blame you. Like, Instagram has pretty shit study methods out there, and I think this is one of them. So instead of doing pretty notes, I'd rather you just don't do any notes at all and do practice questions. That is actually gonna help you learn so much more effectively. So the last one on the list is music. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with music because on one hand, I find it to be really helpful when the place is noisy, but when it's like ultra quiet, I almost never use music in my studying routine. But there is scientific evidence to show that music actually does help your brain concentrate more effectively if it's like classical instrumental music. If it's like music with lyrics, there's actually a study that shows that when you listen to the music going through your ear and you're trying to read the information in front of you, you're basically sub-vocalizing two things at once, and it's making you not being able to learn the information as effectively. So therefore, I'm gonna put music in the B tier. It's not bad, but it's not amazing either. I personally don't like to study using music, but I know some people who do. If you want to learn how to implement the most effective and high-yield studying methods into your own personal studying routine, then you can check out the first link in the description below. But as always, may God guide us on the right path, and I'll see you in the next video.